The neck belts, introduced last month in an attempt to reduce head injuries,
Once considered normal or even innovative, these car features turned out to be dangerous by design. From steel dashboards to explosive fuel tanks, they caused injuries, chaos, and countless recalls. Thankfully, time and safety standards forced them out. Here are the 13 dangerous old car features that no longer exist. Some car companies once tried a strange idea: seatbelts that went around your neck to stop whiplash during crashes.
Hi, Dad!
The goal was to keep your head and neck steady. At first, it might have seemed like a good plan, but it wasn't. These seatbelts could actually make things worse. In a bad crash, they could injure your neck badly or even choke you. Before anti-lock braking systems became standard, many vehicles relied on traditional brakes that locked up under hard pressure, especially on wet or icy roads. When the wheels locked, the driver lost steering control, turning a sudden stop into a dangerous skid. This often led to accidents that could have been avoided with better brake technology. In emergencies, drivers had to pump the brakes manually to maintain control, a skill most never mastered. The lack of ABS was particularly risky in larger vehicles, where stopping distances were longer and weight added momentum. As technology advanced, ABS became one of the most important safety features in modern cars, automatically preventing wheel lockup and helping drivers maintain control during hard braking. Today, it is hard to imagine driving without it. But for decades, the absence of ABS made roads more dangerous and crashes far more likely in panic situations. In many older vehicles, especially from the 1950s through the 1980s, front bench seats were the norm, offering wide-open seating for 3 passengers across. With no center divider or support, there was nothing to stop a person from sliding across the seat during sharp turns, sudden stops, or collisions. In cars without seatbelts, this became even more dangerous, as occupants could be thrown into the dashboard steering wheel or even out of the vehicle. In some cases, drivers lost control because a sliding passenger accidentally interfered with the pedals or gear selector. The flat design prioritized space and comfort over restraint or safety. As safety standards improved, automakers began replacing bench seats with bucket seats, which helped keep each occupant in place and allowed for better integration of seatbelts. The once common bench seat without a divider is now remembered as a charming but risky relic of automotive history. Before the 1960s, most cars were built without seatbelts, and many drivers viewed them as unnecessary or even dangerous. Some believed belts would trap them in a crash rather than save them. As a result, early vehicles offered little to no protection in accidents. During collisions, unrestrained drivers were often thrown into the dashboard or through the windshield, while rear passengers became deadly projectiles. The idea of securing occupants was still new, and many manufacturers resisted change, thinking it would make cars seem unsafe. Not advanced public pressure grew as fatalities climbed, eventually forcing regulations to make seatbelts standard. Even after laws were passed, many drivers refused to use them, seeing belts as uncomfortable or restricted. Today, it is hard to imagine cars without seatbelts, but for decades, the absence of this basic safety feature contributed to countless injuries and lives lost in preventable crashes. In the early to mid-20th century, car interiors were built for looks, not safety, and steel dashboards were a common feature.
Okay.
These dashboards were made entirely of hard metal, with sharp edges and no padding. During a collision, this design became deadly, turning the dashboard into a solid wall of impact for drivers and passengers. Even low-speed crashes often resulted in broken jaws, cracked skulls, or deep facial injuries, because there was nothing to soften the blow. Unlike modern dashboards, which use energy-absorbing materials, early versions had no give and no safety considerations. The styling may have looked sleek, but it came at a high cost. As accident data accumulated and injuries mounted, automakers were forced to rethink interior design. By the late 1960s, padded dashboards became standard steel. Dashboards faded away, remembered now as a dangerous relic from a time when style mattered more than survival. Older cars were built like tanks with solid frames and rigid bodies, but what seemed strong was actually dangerous in a crash. Without crumple zones, the force of impact was transferred directly to the occupants, causing severe injuries or death. Unlike modern cars that absorb energy by collapsing in controlled ways, older vehicles had no such safety buffer. In head-on collisions, passengers often suffered internal injuries from the sudden stop, while the car itself showed little visible damage. Many believed that heavier steel meant better protection, but safety research later proved otherwise. Crumple zones were introduced to absorb impact, gradually reducing the force reaching the cabin. This breakthrough reshaped vehicle design, prioritizing occupant survival over structural toughness. The lack of crumple zones in early cars turned every serious crash into a deadly event, making them far less safe than their modern counterparts, despite their rugged appearance. Swingaway steering columns were introduced as a luxury feature in the 1960s, designed to give drivers more room to enter and exit the vehicle. While the idea seemed innovative, the execution brought serious safety concerns. These columns had moving parts and locking mechanisms that sometimes failed during collisions or even regular use. In a crash, the column could shift unexpectedly, jamming the steering or collapsing in the wrong direction. In some cases, it became a direct hazard to the driver, contributing to chest or abdominal injuries. Unlike fixed columns, which were gradually made collapsible for safety, the swing-away versions prioritized comfort over crash performance. The added complexity made repairs difficult and increased the chances of malfunction. Over time, as crash testing standards improved and reliability became more important, swing-away steering columns were phased out, remembered more for their flaws than their convenience. Station wagons from the 1960s through the 1980s often came with side-facing rear seats designed to carry extra passengers, especially children. While they added seating capacity, they ignored basic safety principles. In the event of a collision, these sideways seats offered almost no protection. Seatbelts, if present, were often lap-only and ineffective during side impacts or rollovers. Passengers seated sideways could be violently thrown across the cabin or slammed into each other, increasing the risk of injury or worse. In rear-end collisions, there was little to shield them from the impact force, and in hard turns, balance was easily lost, making the ride unstable. The design also made child restraint systems nearly impossible to use. As crash testing standards evolved, automakers phased out side-facing seats, recognizing them as a major safety liability rather than a clever seating solution. During the 1970s, some vehicles like the Ford Pinto were designed with fuel tanks positioned directly behind the rear axle to save space and reduce costs.
As well as fabricating some sort of a bar cage system.
However, this placement created a deadly hazard in rear-end collisions. Even low-speed crashes could puncture the tank or crush it against the differential, leading to fuel leaks and fires. In the case of the Pinto, several tragic incidents occurred where cars exploded after being hit from behind. Investigations revealed that the risk was known but not addressed due to cost concerns. The issue led to lawsuits, public outrage, and a major blow to Ford's reputation. This design flaw became a turning point in automotive safety, pushing regulators and manufacturers to rethink fuel tank placement and crash protection. Today, rear-mounted fuel tanks are considered one of the most dangerous design choices ever made in vehicle history and serve as a lasting lesson in safety negligence. In early vehicles, steering columns were made from solid metal shafts that extended directly from the steering wheel to the steering mechanism. While structurally simple,
that looks just right. So once I'm 100% on this wheel,
these non-collapsible columns posed a deadly risk in frontal collisions. Without any give, the column could be pushed backward into the driver during a crash, causing severe chest or facial injuries, and in some cases, even impalement. The rigid design offered no energy absorption, turning the steering wheel into a spear pointed at the driver's seat. As crash testing evolved, it became clear that something had to change. The solution was the collapsible steering column, which compressed on impact, reducing the risk of injury significantly. Introduced in the late 1960s, this innovation quickly became a standard safety feature. Non-collapsible steering columns are now viewed as a grim reminder of a time when driver protection was secondary to mechanical simplicity. In older vehicles, steering wheels were often large, thin, and made from hard materials like bakelite or metal. Some even featured decorative horn rings or chrome knobs designed for styling or added grip. While they looked elegant, they posed a serious danger in collisions. Without airbag systems or padded surfaces, these hard steering wheels became a primary point of impact for the driver. In frontal crashes, the driver's chest or face could slam into the wheel, causing broken bones, internal injuries, or worse. The knobs and rings acted like blunt objects, increasing the severity of injury. Even in minor accidents, drivers often suffered facial cuts or bruises from the rigid wheel structure. As safety standards advanced, steering wheels were redesigned with energy-absorbing materials, collapsible columns, and airbag integration. The hard-knobbed designs of the past now serve as a reminder of how once fashionable features often overlooked the importance of basic crash protection. Before modern fuel injection systems, manual chokes were a common feature in cars. With carbureted engines, drivers had to pull a choke knob or lever to enrich the fuel mixture during cold starts. While this gave some control, it also introduced risk and confusion. If left engaged too long, the engine could flood, causing stalling, poor fuel economy, and excessive emissions. Inexperienced drivers often forgot to disengage the choke after starting, which led to fouled spark plugs, rough idling, and even engine damage. On the other hand, failing to use the choke on a cold engine could make starting nearly impossible, especially in winter. Manual chokes required constant attention and a good understanding of engine behavior, something not all drivers had. As technology advanced, automatic chokes and electronic fuel injection replaced this outdated system, making starting simpler and safer. Manual chokes now represent a time when driving demanded both hands and constant awareness. In many older cars, the interior trim, including sun visors, dashboards, and door panels, was made from hard plastic or metal with little to no padding. During a collision, these sharp or rigid surfaces became dangerous points of impact. Even a simple sun visor could cause head injuries if struck during a crash. Hard trim along the roofline dashboard and pillars added to the risk, turning otherwise harmless parts into serious threats in an accident. Passengers who struck their heads during sudden stops often suffered cuts, bruises, or concussions because nothing was designed to absorb the force. As automotive safety evolved, padded interiors became more common with energy-absorbing materials, replacing rigid components. Modern cars now include soft trim and carefully designed surfaces to minimize injury risk. The unpadded interiors of early cars are a reminder that comfort and style once took priority over occupant safety in vehicle design.